Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for August 25th of 2023, and currently we have a slight risk for central Illinois into southern Indiana, with a very large marginal threat around that does extend all the way from Delaware as far west as eastern Colorado. So we have a large area for severe weather here, and I will get into why that is, but for now, keep this in mind. Our main triggering factor is going to be I think either a stationary boundary or a cold front across this particular location to trigger severe weather developments across this location. And I will get into why there is a slight risk region for central Illinois and southern Indiana. You also do have another marginal threat for parts of the Michigan panhandle thingy into northern Wisconsin. I likely am not going to cover at all in today's forecast. However, keep that in mind if you do live in that particular location. As for threats for today, we do have a very tiny 2% tornado threat for southern Ohio into parts of West Virginia and Kentucky. This is going to be a very localized event, I would assume. Not really pose all that much of a threat to the places around it. However, as for wind, we do have a 15% for that slight risk region, as well as a 5% for that marginal threat region for the northern Midwest. As for our hail threat, we do have a couple areas for 5%. We do have this area for small to medium hail for parts of Kansas into southern Nebraska and eastern Colorado. I'm not sure how possible that's going to be. There is a lot of uncertainty with today's forecast. However, we do have this 5% hail threat, which again, I don't even know really if that is going to be all that possible with our current setup. However, we also do have a 5% for the slight risk region for central Illinois into southern Indiana, as well as a 5% for the marginal threat for Michigan Peninsula thing and northern Wisconsin. Taking a look at our 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook, mainly focusing on this red disturbance here for the Gulf Coast that could impact parts of Florida late in this week or early next week. It does have an 80% chance, and this is going to be the main threat for tropical weather for this week and into early next week. This does have a very high possibility of developing into at least a tropical storm in the next 7 days and impacting hurricane-prone areas, mostly on the Gulf side of Florida, it appears, as well as possibly even the parts of Alabama that does touch the Gulf Coast and maybe Mississippi as well. But mainly it does look like it is going to impact the Gulf side of Florida and the Florida Panhandle. So do keep that in mind over the next 7 days if you do live in this particular location. This definitely does have a high potential of hitting the United States and targeting hurricane-prone areas in the next 7 days. And that's really all we have for tropical weather. These threats here are likely not going to pose all that much of a threat to the United States, if not any threat to the United States. These are likely going to veer off to the north. As you can see, the path that they are most likely going to take is going to be, again, veering off to the north. And that does stand with the direction of Tropical Storm Franklin here, which is on track to become a hurricane by either Saturday or Sunday. And it is expected to go northward somewhere in this direction and not affect the United States in any way. So our main threat for our tropical weather is going to be this 80% in the Gulf Coast that could impact the Gulf side of Florida. If we take a look at our radar Omega models, focusing on the slight risk region, not the rest of the marginal threat, but the slight risk region, you can see that we do have a little bit of a shortwave trough that is expected to make its way southward a little bit and enhance that little region there to a slight risk. That is why that is a slight risk, and this entire area isn't a marginal threat. That's because of that weak shortwave trough that is expected to dip down southward a little bit and help convectively enhance that location. And as for the marginal threat for the Michigan Peninsula thingy into Wisconsin, you can see that we do have the shortwave trough that is expected to continue propagating southeastward. It did trigger severe weather development in northern North Dakota the last 2 days, and it has propagated eastward to trigger severe weather development in the Michigan Peninsula thing in northern Wisconsin. So that's primarily the reason why there is a marginal threat there, and you can see it is fairly strong. We do have a very strong mid-level flow that is expected to be into the low 60s, possibly even getting into the mid-60s in some locations. That is definitely going to elongate photographs and support the possibility of small to medium hail across its region. However, I think overall weaker instability might be in place, and that's what's keeping it down to a 5%. But I could be wrong. But again, there is a lot of uncertainty with today's forecast, but we could definitely see the possibility of small to medium hail for the Michigan Peninsula thing. Taking a look at our temperature here, focusing on the marginal threat for now. The reason why I am looking at temperature before dew points is because this does show us our triggering factors for this very large marginal threat across the from the Central Plains into the eastern coast. And you can see that we do have a little bit of a boundary here. You can't really see the numbers with radar Omega. However, you can see that there is a little bit of a boundary here that does look like it's more of a stationary boundary, but that is what's going to be the main triggering factor for severe weather development for this marginal threat location. And something that I did forget to mention is if we go back to our 500 millibars here, there isn't really a lot that's going on for the marginal threat that does extend into Kansas and Colorado, and that does have that 5% hail threat there. However, you can see that we don't really have all that strong mid-level flow in the particular location that would support small to medium hail. However, it does look like there are some spotty areas of some weak wind flow that maybe could elongate hodographs a little bit and lead to small hail for this particular location. But again, with the shortwave trough that is dipping south, that is the primary reason why there is a slight risk region for central Illinois into southern Indiana, and not just a very large marginal threat in the entire length of this marginal threat region. Something I did forget to mention before we get into dew points is you see this area of these maroon colors across the Central Plains. This is associated with that high pressure system that is expected to linger across this location. This is expected to keep temperatures up to those 100 values, and across Iowa and Illinois, I think we were supposed to see heat index readings of up to 120 across Iowa and Illinois. That is insane amount of heat, and that is something that you would see more so in Death Valley and not across the Central Plains during August. However, with these type of temperatures across this region, make sure you are watching out for heat-related illnesses such as heat stroke across this region. And if you do have any plans outside, I would recommend staying indoors with these type of temperatures. However, if you do have any plans outside, please stay hydrated, as you will definitely need water in temperatures this high. Taking a look at our dew points, focusing on the marginal threat location and the slight risk region, you can see that we do have some strong varying dew points. Across the east, we do have dew points that are going to be back towards the mid-70s, but the low mid-70s and the low 70s. And then across the Midwest into the Ohio Valley, you can see that we are expected to have dew points that are going to get into the upper 70s and low 80s, as well as dip down into the upper 50s and the low to mid-60s and possibly upper 60s into the rest of Kansas and Colorado. So we will have a large area of varying instability. However, with the intense heat that we have, this will definitely allow for the possibility of intense amounts of instability across this region, especially with dew points that are going to get up to the low 80s and even temperatures that are going to be in the widespread hundreds. Taking a look at our instability, you can see that we are expected to have extreme amounts of instability across this region. However, we have had some severe thunderstorms back towards the northern Ohio Valley that could be dropping this instability significantly. However, this is still insane amounts of instability. We are expected to see a huge instability plume of Cape values that are going to get into the low 500s across Indiana, and the widespread 4,000s into the widespread upper 4,000s across a large portion of the United States and a large portion of this marginal threat, including the slight risk region. However, as for the far east and the far west, you can see that we do have much more weaker instability. However, overall, this type of instability will definitely support the possibility of damaging winds and the possibility of small to medium hail where we have the potential for it, as well as the possibility of one or two brief tornadoes for that small 2% tornado threat for southern Ohio into Kentucky and West Virginia. Taking a look at our 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index readings, you can see the only location that is going to be using these energy helicity index readings provided to them. Like yesterday and the day before that, a lot of these energy helicity index readings outside of where the shortwave trough is expected to pass through, which is mostly going to affect southern Ohio and generate enough directional shear for one or two brief tornadoes. A lot of these energy helicity index values are being very contaminated by the intense instability that we have and the overall weak shear that we have for this particular location. However, with the instability that we have, and some weak directional shear for southern Ohio into Kentucky and West Virginia, we can definitely see the possibility of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes. As you can see that we do have a area of higher potential for that 2% tornado threat region, which should be indicative of that 2% tornado threat region for southern Ohio into Kentucky and West Virginia. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. And if you live in any of the areas that I covered for today, please stay weather alert for the time being. And if you live in any of the areas that is expected to see extreme heat, I hope that this rain does catch you a large break today from the intense heat that you have. And hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.